All right, then I am going to reconvene the Temecula City Council meeting, and we have a public hearing this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and read the opening statement, and then I'll read number 9. Any person may submit written comments to the City Council before a public hearing or may appear and be heard in support of or in opposition to the approval of the projects at the time of the hearing. If you challenge any of the projects in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city clerk at or prior to the public hearing. For all public hearings, each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Public comments may be made in person at the meeting by submitting a speaker card to the city clerk or deputy city clerk, or by submitting an email to be read aloud into the record at the meeting. Email comments must be submitted to the councilcomments@temeculaca.gov. Email comments on all matters, including those not on the agenda, must be received prior to the time the item is called for public comments. At public hearings involving land use matters, the property owner or the applicant/property owner has the burden of proof and therefore shall be allowed 15 minutes for an initial presentation and an additional 10 minutes for rebuttal by its development team following other comments on the matter. The mayor may allow more time if required to provide due process for the property owner or applicant. An appellant other than the property owner or applicant and the spokesperson for an organized group of residents residing within the noticed area of the property, which is the subject of the public hearing, shall be allowed 15 minutes to present the appellant's position to the council. The mayor may allow more time if required to provide the due process for the appellant. All other members of the public may speak during the public hearing for a maximum period of 5 minutes each. Deferral of one speaker's time to another is not permitted. In the event there is a large number of speakers, the mayor may reduce the maximum time limit for members of the public to speak. All public participation is governed by the council policy regarding public participation at meetings adopted by resolution number 2021-54. Item number 9, adopt a resolution to approve the 2021-2029 housing element update, the 6th cycle, and an update to the public safety element, long-range planning project number LR 18-1620. All right, and Mr. Watson, I'm throwing to you.
And I will go ahead and throw to Mr. Rabideau, who's the project manager on this. He's going to lead us through a presentation along with our consultant, Ms. Amanda Tropiano over there. And then, of course, we'll take questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. It's nice to see all of you this evening. So tonight we're going to be covering 2 topics. We're going to go through the first topic, which is the public safety element. Pause, allow you to ask any questions, and then we'll continue on to the housing element. So the public safety element. Well, in compliance with state law, we're required to update our public safety element because we are updating our housing element. One of the things we need to do with this is do what's called Sb99 analysis. This is looking at evacuation routes in the community. We also need to update our policies to address extreme weather events like fires, and we also need to reference the city and the county's local hazard mitigation plans. These are important things to do to make sure that we are always compatible with any type of FEMA funding in the future if there ever was a disaster. Just to let you know, in terms of our other approvals, we've already had this approved by the state from their 2 agencies, from one state agency and one county agency, including the Board of Forestry Protection, and as well as the Riverside County Airport Land Use Commission. And a more detailed update is coming to our public safety element. We'll be doing this with our quality of life master plan and our full general plan update that is already underway. Are there any questions on the public safety element? Okay. Well, I finally get to turn it over to someone. I get to turn it over to our consultant who'll be presenting on the housing element, and I'll see you a little bit later in the presentation where we can ask questions as well. So I'll introduce Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Amanda Tropiano, and I am a principal with De Novo Planning Group, excited to be working with the City of Temecula on your housing element update. So for better or worse, Brandon got the short side of this 2-part presentation. Mine is a bit longer, so I appreciate your patience. We're talking about a really complicated topic, and there's a lot to unpack here, so thank you. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to start with just a primer. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the background of a housing element, but I'm going to go way back. So housing elements were first required for cities and counties in California way back in 1969 under then Governor Ronald Reagan. And since that time, the cities and counties throughout the state have been updating them periodically. So there have been, as you can imagine, many laws and regulations that have evolved since 1969. And bringing us to today, we're going to talk about some of those new regulations that impact the way that Temecula plans for housing. So the first City of Temecula housing element was adopted in 1993. This was the second cycle or second set of updates required of agencies in California. It was later updated in 2002, 2010, and in 2014. So you can count the number of cycles. We're in the sixth cycle. So you might hear me refer to it as your sixth cycle housing element or your 2021 to 2029 housing element. Those are interchangeable. This cycle, the sixth cycle, addresses that time period for the next 8 years. And every 8 years, when the new cycle comes out, new units are assigned to each jurisdiction, and the jurisdiction is required to plan to accommodate those units. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time tonight talking through what that means in more detail. So how are housing units assigned to a city like the City of Temecula? So first, starting at kind of the top of the pyramid, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, they calculate based on a number of statistics, projections, and working with lots of socioeconomic and demographic information, the total number of housing units projected that needs to be accommodated throughout the state. And this is then allocated to different sub-agencies to determine each agency's fair share. So first it goes to a regional agency. So here for most of Southern California, that's the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG. And then they plan for how to distribute their fair allocation to each of their member agency. And again, we are in the sixth cycle, which covers an allocation period of 2021 to 2029. So these regional parties like SCAG, they develop a formula to distribute their allocation to their member agencies. That includes cities and it includes the unincorporated county areas. So SCAG went through a process of developing a methodology that looked at a variety of input factors. I believe their methodology report is upwards of 100 pages, and it included a variety of information, and I'll highlight just some of those. Things like socioeconomic factors, population trends, housing characteristics, commute patterns, access to transit facilities, access to job centers, existing housing needs, and so on. So this is resulting in what we would call the RHNA, or the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. That's each agency's fair share allocation of the regional housing needs. So as you're also familiar and have been briefed, the Southern California Association of Governments received quite a large allocation for this planning period of 1.3 million housing units to plan for throughout its regional entities. Through that process, they did allow for jurisdictions to appeal their RHNA. In 99.99% of the cases, those were denied. No significant changes were made to any agency that appealed its RHNA. As a result of this very robust process that resulted in very little changes, there was an approximately 6-month delay in every SCAG agency receiving its final RHNA. However, the City of Temecula has been hard at work meeting all of the original timeframes. Of course, the same courtesy was not provided to the agencies to receive a delay in the adoption of your housing element. So we are on track to continue to meet all of those original timeframe objectives. So every city and county, including the City of Temecula, receives its RHNA based on this formula or methodology developed by SCAG. And then the local responsibility is to demonstrate that the agency has sufficient land available for the private market to develop the number of housing units assigned through this fair share methodology. So again, these numbers are updated every 8 years. So 8 years ago, you had an allocation for your 5th cycle. We're in your 6th cycle. In 8 years from now, you'll get new numbers for the 7th cycle. So just to summarize, the state is at the top of the pyramid. They come up with the total number of housing units that need to be accommodated throughout the state. They assign a regional proportion to each of the regional metropolitan planning organizations. Here for most of Southern California, that's SCAG. SCAG developed a methodology that was approved by the state, and it used that methodology to distribute to the city of Temecula your regional share that you'll be planning for through this period. This process to develop a draft housing element has been ongoing. We started this way back in what feels like a lifetime ago in late 2019. A lot has changed since then, but we have progressed forward with developing a robust strategy to accommodate your RHNA, preparing and releasing a public draft housing element that was circulated for a 30-day public review period. We most recently were in front of your Planning Commission and then, of course, in front of you here tonight. We also are responsible for circulating the draft element to HCD for their review, comment, and confirmation that it complies with state housing law. So through the public outreach and survey process, we heard a number of key factors that are included as an appendix to the housing element, but I wanted to highlight specifically how some of these themes are addressed in the draft element before you tonight. So in general, we received some feedback related to members of the public wishing to purchase a home in Temecula, but that they were finding it too expensive to afford one. So we've identified a number of goals, policies, and programs, those listed on the screen, to promote home ownership and reduce the costs of purchasing a home. Another key theme we heard was regarding existing homes being in generally good condition, but needing some general maintenance. So again, developing goals, policies, and programs to improve and conserve your existing housing stock and support your current homeowners and your tenants with home improvement projects. A desire to see a variety of housing types available in the city of Temecula. So some goals, policies, and programs to diversify the types of housing offered here in your community. And then some general concerns regarding the role of new housing causing additional traffic concerns or other constraints on your infrastructure. And one of the things we'll be speaking to tonight is that the amount and availability of land to accommodate that regional share, to accommodate your RHNA, is accommodated within sites already approved for existing residential development. So this housing element does not propose any rezoning or upzoning of sites to accommodate your RHNA. These sites have already been designated as appropriate for residential development, and the subsequent environmental analysis to accommodate that development has been completed. Additionally, as future projects are proposed to develop housing at any income level, those, of course, are still reviewed on a case-by-case basis in order to determine the potential impacts on any infrastructure. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about the history of housing in Temecula and why it's important for us to plan for the next 8 years. So Temecula has grown a lot over the last 20 years, and it's grown significantly faster than the county as a whole. However, as the community reaches its development potential, that's starting to level out, and it's starting to more closely resemble the growth patterns at the region. Most of the significant community growth occurred in the early 2000s, but every year the community still continues to grow a little bit. And as vacant land continues to diminish, different types of housing development will occur here in Temecula, similar to other developing areas throughout the region. We also are required to consider the role of population demographics and the distribution of different segments of the community as we start to think about how new housing should be accommodated. So this is an exhibit through one of the state-required sections regarding fair housing and some tools and mapping provided by both HCD and the federal government to provide insight into how we analyze this type of information. So you can see shown on the screen here is an illustration of the distribution by demographic class or ethnic or racial composition. And you can see that through this analysis, the distribution is very well integrated in Temecula. And so this is part of our considerations and analysis as we approach planning for housing. We also look at differences between renters and homeowners. Temecula has a lower percentage of renters when compared to the proportion of renters throughout the entire SCAG region. And of no surprise, most of your renters are newer residents. These are people looking for an opportunity to live in Temecula, maybe for the first time, before they're looking for homeownership opportunities. So most of your renters have moved to the community within the past 10 years. Since 2000, again, the community grew in a variety of ways. So it's added housing stock in really all different types of patterns. It's added single-family detached homes, but it's also added attached homes, small multifamily units that are 2 to 4 units, and larger units that are 5 or more units. And proportionately, Temecula has a higher proportion of its housing stock comprised of single-family detached homes than the region, but it's very similar to kind of your immediate area here in the county. Temecula's vacancy rate is a healthy 5.5%, and the average household size is just over just about 3.25 persons. The vacancy rate for your rental units is a little higher than the regional average, but some of these statistics reflect issues related to things that are no longer necessarily relevant, including short-term rentals or seasonal properties that have been addressed through some of your local ordinance updates. But this is all very much in line with what would be expected in a community like Temecula and very similar to patterns in the region. But certainly home ownership here in the city has gotten more expensive. So home prices have trended upwards throughout really the city's existence. And then looking here specifically at the time period between 2012 and today, the median home price today is about $500,000. This is about 22% higher than the county as a whole. And if we start to equate that to what it means for a household to be able to afford a home like that, a household really needs to earn about $125,000 a year. That's around $62 an hour combined to afford the median home price, and that's assuming all your general homeownership parameters, 20% down, standard lending rates, et cetera. Comparatively, after adjusting for inflation, in 2011, a household only needed to make about $97,000. So you can see that, relatively speaking, homes are getting more expensive and households need to make more in order to afford a home here in the community. Rents are also getting more expensive. We are at an all-time high for rental rates, and that trend's not expected to decrease. In summer of last year, the average rent for an apartment in the community was just over $2,000. That's 14% more than it was in the prior year. Rental rates are increasing for all unit sizes and prices. Almost a quarter of Temecula households spend more than 50% of their household income on housing. So this is a significant portion of your community that are dedicating over 50% of their household income to housing and housing costs. So the role of Temecula in the region is to receive its allocation of regional housing growth from SCAG and demonstrate that there is sufficient land available to be developed again by the private market to develop those units during the planning period. But that number isn't just taken on its own. SCAG provides additional guidance on how your overall RHNA is distributed to different affordability levels. So there are 4 key affordability levels that need to be addressed within the context of your overall RHNA. And those affordability levels are set by the state, and they depend on the household size. So for reference, we're going to talk about a household of a household of 4. If you're looking for different household size statistics, those are included, of course, in the housing element. But for a family of 4, the first category are very low income households, and those are households earning up to 50% of the area median income, which in 2020 was $75,300 for Riverside County. That's about $19 an hour total. Again, we're talking about household incomes. Very low households earn 51% to 80% of the area median income, up to about $60,000 a year, and that's about $31 an hour. Moderate income households earn between 80 and 120% of the area median income, so about up to $350,000 a year. And then finally, above moderate income households, those are earning 120% or more of the area median income, so more than $90,300 a year, more than $46 an hour. So what types of housing do these lower income units really kind of accommodate? So we thought it would be helpful to share the equivalent types of jobs that are associated with these household incomes. So for very low income households, those again earning up to about 50% of the area median income, these are individuals like your preschool teachers, your warehouse workers, and your grocery store workers. They're earning incomes within this category. Low income households earning up to about $60,000 per year or $31 an hour. These are jobs like a petty officer, third class with a housing allowance, a starting teacher salary, some of your entry-level firefighters, even a restaurant manager or a resident physician. And then looking at moderate income households, those earning between 80 and 120% of the area median income, a deputy sheriff trainee, a second lieutenant, again with a housing allowance, and professional services like accountants. These are all types of services and incomes associated with these types of housing, these types of income levels. So getting to the nuts and bolts of it, the city's RHNA for the 6th cycle, or the 2021 to 2029 planning period, is 4,193 units. And about half of these are dedicated to the lower income housing categories, so half dedicated to those households earning 80% or less of the area median income. Then 778 are allocated to moderate income households, those earning between 80 and 120%. And then about a quarter, or 1,255 of the units dedicated to above moderate income households. So what types of housing are available in the community, and what is the community planning for in terms of the next 8 years? So I've mentioned this before, but to confirm, the city's responsibility is to set the stage for the private market to develop housing. The city is not obligated to develop housing. It is not responsible for developing housing. Your responsibility is with the powers within your control, which is to provide land use direction for the private market to develop housing. Public funds certainly may be used to serve as an incentive or support the development of affordable housing projects or result in the restrictions or covenants on affordable projects. But the city's requirement to demonstrate through its land use plan, its zoning code, and other supporting documents like specific plans, that's what the city can do to help facilitate housing. And housing occurs at all different scales and densities. I think we can all agree that there are different points in our life where we want to live in different types of housing. So everything from small rental units to larger single-family homes. Different people at different points in their life are attracted to different types of housing. And so to be able to provide opportunities for your residents to continue to grow in the community at different points in their life, you can help them by allowing for a variety of different development types. Also, by allowing for different types of residential projects, the city can do a good job in supporting your business community. Employers are looking for opportunities to house talent nearby their jobs. People are getting more and more tired of long commutes. So by allowing your employers to ensure that adequate housing opportunities are available for their employees, it's really a business decision and strategy as well. So housing comes in all different shapes and sizes, everything down from accessory dwelling units, duplexes, single-family homes, multifamily projects like condos and apartments, and mixed-use projects, where there's housing on top of other types of services like restaurants or offices. And projects, depending on their affordability, don't have to look that different. Affordable projects and market rate projects held to strong design standards and requirements can both look really nice and integrated into the community. And specifically, we wanted to talk about the role of what's called the missing middle. And this is really a national discussion about there being limited opportunities for development of certain types of housing projects. So this isn't unique to Temecula, but nationwide, there's been a lot of discussion about this missing middle, your smaller duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, your smaller units being available at lower costs than your traditional single-family detached housing that allow for more independent living and sufficient living space. So we call this the missing middle. This was a really common development pattern in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So prior generations had access to this housing as they moved out of their parents' house and before they bought their first-time house. They could use opportunities to live in this type of missing middle housing. But over the years, it's just become more financially difficult for developers to develop this type of housing, so it's missing in a lot of different markets, including here in Temecula. So the city has worked hard to address this through a variety of proactive projects. So specifically in Uptown Temecula, in the Uptown Temecula specific plan, the missing middle product is what is encouraged, incentivized, and desired in the Uptown area. So really trying to get at the heart of addressing the opportunities resulting in those missing middle. So Uptown was really designed and planned to attract jobs and employers by providing market rate affordable housing. So not deed restricted, not subsidized, but just housing that's affordable based on market rates in areas close to jobs and services where younger professionals or people looking for these types of housing products would like to live. So Uptown Temecula also looks for opportunities to redevelop or catalyze development in underutilized areas and really help create a thriving activity center in a focused kind of uptown area. And the city has seen success from this. The city has seen 2 recent residential projects and increasing interest in the uptown area specifically to address some of these missing middle concerns. So the graphic on the screen shown at the top, this is what, again, is used kind of in common nomenclature to describe what that missing middle looks like. And then you can see quite literally that the Uptown specific plan took the concept of that range of development options and specifically allows for the types of development that would be considered the missing middle housing products. But Uptown Temecula is not the only location where missing middle is addressed. Altair, Old Town, and the new Harveston overlay, specifically west of Inez, all also address the missing middle concept. So looking back at the city's success over the past 8 years, one of the requirements in the draft housing element is to evaluate the progress and past accomplishments that were included in your 5th cycle housing element. So generally speaking, the goals and policies included in your current housing element, they continue to be valid. These continue to guide the community in large part on how you want to plan for housing. But some existing programs have been revised, some have been added to address the feedback we received from the community, as well as to comply with some of these new pieces of state legislation. And those new pieces of state legislation that really influence our approach in the housing element are grouped around a few key topic areas, including affirmatively furthering fair housing, the role of the city in identifying adequate sites, specific updates to your development code to comply with state housing law, and then a variety of alphabet soup that are all reflected in your housing element. So some key highlights of the city's success and accomplishments over the past 8 years include the adoption of the city's affordable housing overlay zone and the entitlement of projects under those parameters. The city's continued to provide financial support to the County of Riverside Continuum of Care and other nonprofit organizations that partner in developing, providing services regarding housing here at the local level. The city's also issued an RFP to develop various city-owned properties specifically for affordable housing, has taken proactive measures to update your accessory dwelling unit ordinance and provided educational materials to support the development of ADUs in compliance with state housing law, and is focused on preserving your city's existing affordable housing stock. So for the past planning period, the city had a RENA back in the 5th cycle of just under 1,500 units. And based on the private market development, the private market will have delivered approximately 1,895 housing units during that planning period, which is about 127% of your fifth cycle RHNA. You can see that the vast majority of those units were delivered in the above moderate income category, so additional attention really needs to be paid to understand opportunities to address the requirements at all income levels. So that brings us to the draft sixth cycle housing element here before you tonight. So it's really broken into two parts. The first part is the housing plan. These are your goals, your policies, and your programs that set the stage for how the city is going to address housing decisions during the planning period. The second part is the background report. This is all the analysis, technical information, statistics, demographics, analysis of constraints, a description of the sites and their adequacy, resources available to develop housing, all of the background work that goes into informing those goals, policies, and programs. So the draft housing element, again, does revise some of the city's existing goals and policies to better reflect state law and address the feedback we've heard from the community. And it does include some new policy direction as required by state law to maintain adequate sites throughout the duration of the planning period, the reuse of sites identified in past housing elements, and ways that the city can reduce impacts associated with non-governmental constraints to the development of housing. The draft housing element also includes a number of revisions to existing programs to better refine them and adjust them for the next 8 years. And those include refinements to the programs listed on the screen regarding the city's role in providing land use policy and development capacity, the density bonus ordinance, energy conservation, development fees, and equal housing opportunity. A number of new programs have also been added. Those are, again, listed here, but generally include administrative requirements for the way that the city tracks and monitors progress towards meeting its RHNA, some specific requirements to ensure that the city maintains a zoning code, development code consistent with state housing law, and some additional explanations and support to affirmatively further fair housing, again, in compliance with new legislation required to be reflected in your housing element. So the background report dives deep into the sites inventory, the actual adequate sites to accommodate the city's RHNA. So again, to clarify, the city has adequate land available to accommodate its RHNA at all income levels. No sites have been proposed for rezoning or upzoning as part of this draft housing element. The city looks also to opportunities to get what we call credits or progress towards meeting your sixth cycle. So the sixth cycle planning period has a starting date. It's July 1st of 2021. So any units that are coming online subsequent to that date, those are credited towards meeting your RHNA. So we look for units constructed or under construction, units that are approved but not yet built. And then we can also look to the future development of accessory dwelling units or junior accessory dwelling units as meeting a portion of the city's overall RHNA. Outside of those credits, we looked specifically at vacant land, so land that is not currently developed. Vacant land that's zoned for residential uses outside of your specific plan areas, and then vacant land that's zoned for residential uses inside of your specific plan areas. And that includes, both of those categories include any areas identified within the city's affordable housing overlay zone. So, breaking it down for you here as a summary as to how the city is accommodating its regional share of housing growth. So the sixth cycle RHNA, as a reminder, was 4,193 units, and you can see it broken down by the income categories on the screen. Subtracting credits for units in progress, projects approved but not yet developed, the potential for accessory dwelling units based on a history of the average of the past 3 years, the capacity for residential units within vacant area outside of specific plans. So vacant residential sites outside of specific plans look at a capacity of about 3,430 units, and then vacant residential land inside of specific plan areas has the capacity of about 5,773 units. Altogether, the city's been able to demonstrate that it not only has sufficient land available to accommodate its RHNA at all income categories, but that it has a surplus of land, a surplus of availability of land and units, also at all income categories, although primarily in the moderate and above moderate income categories. What that surplus does is it allows for the, again, private market to develop projects at these housing sites maybe a little differently than we anticipated. We unfortunately don't have a crystal ball to know exactly the number of units or the income level that may be proposed at a specific site. So by allowing for this small surplus, it allows those development applications to come in and for the city to consider them without some of the administrative burdens placed on you through some of these new housing programs regarding the reporting and tracking requirements. On the screen is an exhibit of the location of these vacant lands. This, of course, is included in the housing element. And I think I've made myself clear, but we've asserted that there is sufficient land available to accommodate the city's 6th cycle RHNA.
All right, I'm going to give Amanda a break and take this to the end. So we've got the public outreach portion. We just wanted to reflect that we did robust public outreach for this housing element process. We had a city website that was available, and we had a housing survey where we had over 860 surveys, which is the highest that we've had on a housing element. We had email lists and participation stakeholder lists where we continued to provide outreach throughout the process. We had general advertisements, including a newsletter that went to every resident in the city that included an article about the housing element. We had a social media branding campaign called How's This? We did email blasts and we had newsletter signups as well. We reached out to the chamber, we reached out to real estate associations, we put flyers at laundromats and coffee shops. We reached out to our homeless community by making sure that they had flyers available to them. And we reached out to our affordable housing community with targeted advertisement as well. So we really were out there, and we also included our seniors when they were doing the Meals on Wheels program. We made sure we got them paper surveys as well. So we had 860 survey responses, over 55,000 emails sent by the city alone. That doesn't include outside agencies that forwarded our emails. We had 33,000 newsletters, as mentioned, 77,000 social media impressions. So that's how many times our advertisements got in front of folks regarding the housing element, and 849 social media clicks. I'm not going to read through this entirely, but in terms of our CEQA compliance, we have determined that according to section 15164, an addendum to the general plan, final environmental impact report was completed. Wow. So with that, staff is recommending that the City Council adopt the updated housing element and public safety element. Staff and our consultant are available for questions.
That was very impressive. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Great work. Okay, so questions? Yes. Okay, Jess, shaking your head.
Quick question. So does the Temecula residents get first dibs on this house for the RHNA numbers? So for instance, for the very low, all the way up, what is it? I don't have it right here in front of me, but the very, very low at the bottom, all the way up, do our residents get priority to those houses, or is it kind of first come, first serve as far as whoever is in the lottery?
So just to confirm and clarify your question, you're asking if a new unit is built, does the city have any control on making sure it's only Temecula residents? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. No. The market, the private market, when these are for sale products, the market determines who gets to purchase it, whether it's someone making a higher bid on the home or whether or not they qualify for a loan.
No other questions? Wow, you guys did such a great job. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
So no credits given for the 5th cycle accomplishments by the city in our new allocation?
In your allocation, unfortunately, that is not part of the methodology used by SCAG to allocate its new cycle. It received an entirely new round of allocation from the state that's brand new for the entire SCAG region, and they use that methodology to distribute it equally. So the methodology used here by SCAG in this cycle didn't look at progress on your fifth cycle.
Well, then as a follow-up, if I may, if we get to the 7th cycle, and let's just pretend for a moment we're at close to build out with our properties, right? And we get an additional allocation, what do we do?
It's a wonderful question, and you can imagine lots of jurisdictions in Southern California are dealing with this exact issue. They do not have the availability of vacant land. They're much closer to build out. It's been a challenge this cycle that I think that the state has started to appreciate in a different way. And I don't, again, have a crystal ball as to the methodology used to determine that statewide share or the regional share for the 7th cycle. But I would continue to recommend to the city that it continues to advocate for more control over the allocation it receives in future planning periods, and to continue to inform the regional agencies and state agencies the challenges that the city is encountering in accommodating new development as it approaches build out.
Oh, go ahead, Brandon, sorry.
Now, I'd just like to add, we're in this situation because of this council and prior councils being ahead of the ball, you know, trying to address missing middle housing.
It's a good thing, by the way. We're in this good situation.
This is a good situation. Yeah. We were able to zone and plan on our terms, not the state's terms. So, you know, congratulations to this council and prior councils for doing the hard work ahead of time.
Well, but we are now, which is good, but 16 years from now or 8 years from now, we might not be. So I'm wondering if maybe we could just make a note to continue a conversation with our legislative advocates in Sacramento and perhaps the league, because I know we're not the only city dealing with this, right? And so as we start to contemplate future legislation on allocations, certainly we would want the credit for the work we have done and staying ahead of that curve. But, you know, eventually we're not going to have that opportunity anymore. And I know a lot of cities are struggling with that given their lack of vacant land or just redevelopment opportunities in general. And there's a lot of resistance if you're, you know, trying to provide the opportunity. What do? Upzone, you know, residential areas to allow for multifamily that used to be single family. You know, it becomes a challenge in the future. We're not there. We're not close to there yet, but it would behoove us to get in front of that now. Yeah.
And we definitely need to stay in touch with our legislators. I heard numbers today of cities as much as 20,000. They have to make up for 20,000 homes. So, and even our numbers are better than we anticipated, right? Because of the previous planning that we had done and working with the development community. So
that is correct.
Yeah, go ahead, Stu.
So just a point of clarification, more for the audience than for me, that these units don't have to be built. We have to provide for that amount of building. So if 8 years from now we only built 1,000, we're not going to get penalized because we're not building. The market is building. So I just want everybody to realize that this is not something the city of Temecula is pushing out there to have 4,000 units built, even though we're probably going to be well over that anyways. This is something the state says you have to accommodate for 4,000 units and let the market do what the market's going to do.
That is correct.
Correct.
And the other note is the cities that are built out, and Temecula will be built out, where all the vacant land is as it was planned in the original general plan, you know, as developed. But the RENA numbers don't stop. They continue to assign us RENA numbers even though there's no place to put anything. So, and then the other catch-22 is that the state took away the only vehicle that we had to help finance those affordable housing units, and that was our redevelopment agency, which was working beautifully. So they stole all the money from all the cities, and here we are, but they keep assigning us numbers. Oh, it's a great day. Okay, so this is a public...
One last question, Mayor.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
So I am in total agreement with my colleagues here, and my biggest question to you is and I was able to talk to some of the staff, but just so the public knows, what was our initial numbers that we were supposed to get for RENA? Oh. And then why are our numbers over half of what we were supposed to get?
Great question.
Which is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's much better, but yes.
Yeah, great question. So our original numbers were upwards of 11,000. And there's a range that we were looking at when they had the initial formulas. And what happened is For the very first time since 1969, many of the coastal cities and urban cities said, you know what, we haven't been doing our part for a long time. And we have all the jobs, but all the housing continues to be pushed out. And so, and really a huge surprise to most cities in the SCAG region, the entire block of voting changed and said, you know what, we're going to bring back these units to the coastal cities and urban centers where the units belong, so people don't have to drive 2 hours to a good paying job. And so we're in a good position because of that. Cities in the coastal areas and urban areas, they have a much larger challenge ahead of them.
Mm-hmm. Anybody? Any other questions? Okay, it is a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and then we'll see if we have any comments. So I'm opening the public hearing for comments, and Madam City Clerk, is there anything?
Yes, we have 2 public comments.
Okay.
The first one is by Laurel Lamont, and the second one is Jessica Christopher.
Okay, thank you. Who's the second one?
Jessica Christopher,
Oh, okay.
and they do
Thanks.
have 5 minutes each.
Okay. Hi, Laurel, how are you?
Hi, I'm okay.
You're going to have to pull that mic down a little bit, too.
Okay.
There, thanks.
Are we good?
Yes.
Oh, I'm tired. Okay, so first of all, thank you. Thank you, Brandon, for including the missing middle in that housing element. I didn't see, when I was here at the Planning Commission, and I didn't see the land trust section and the possible local contributions from businesses, which I had suggested. So I know it was voted on at the commission, but I didn't see it in this one. I don't know if that was removed.
Madam Mayor, if I may just interject over here.
Go ahead, Luke.
They were in, they're in the
They're in
draft,
there.
the proposed draft. So
Perfect.
both the things that you proposed
So
are in there.
I want to say thank you, 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 thank you so many times. I've been asking for this for what, like 4+ years. I've been doing this a long time, and it took me a lot of work to come up with solutions and ideas and to help the city help its workforce. I want to talk more about how the workforce, and I know you didn't mean target in that manner. I want you to know that I know that. Yeah. But we're not transitional jobs. You know, we are a very diverse group. Like when I open at 5 o'clock in the morning at the grocery store, we're all over the age of 40. And according to the housing element, $125,000 is what we have to make in order to afford a home here. So things are going to have to, something, right? We're going to have to come up with ideas. Land is finite. I'm aware of that. So habitat's a great model. I think we need more of habitat, and not just in the, what is it, what do you call it, single-family home realm, but creating habitat in a more smaller, maybe condo type.
More density.
Right, there we go. So, and then I want to speak to, I share the concerns, and I want to speak for the workforce. We share the concerns of the potential opposition to this construction. We don't want the traffic. And I think that creating these home opportunities helps to reduce traffic, because a lot of these people, like they're not here right now because they have to go back to Paris, but they work here. And I just want to restore value to the service industry, because we want to serve this community, and we should be able to live within the community in which we serve. You know, we're capped at, like, what was it that we were talking about earlier, the manufacturing jobs, right? Yeah. So that is it $80,000, $125,000 in order to live here. So it's, you know, my girlfriend, who I also work with and is a teacher, she's got to go home soon, and her little's here, and everybody's at home feeding the kids. And so I'm speaking on their behalf, but they're here, and they're packing your groceries, and they want to be here too, and I feel like they should be here too. So thank you for the missing middle. Thank you for the new ideas. We need the new ideas. And I just want to keep showing my face here, showing that we want to value the service industry in which serves the community. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great ideas.
And the last speaker on this item is Jessica Christopher.
Mayor, City Council. So I watched this entire thing online, I'm under the impression that it's low-income housing. Am I wrong about that? Is it not low-income housing? It's not. Okay. Well, they're going to be able to purchase it. They're buying it. They're going to have equity. Okay, I'm good with that. Because that's an avenue for wealth and growth and healthy kids. This is good. What I am concerned about is what portion of the SB9 is that. I watched 3 of their meetings and I didn't hear any mention of SB9. And my concern is that's in this element. And SB9 maybe right now isn't going to be a big deal, but 10 years from now, it could very much be a big deal. And Blackstone is buying again in California, and there is major possibility to destroy this area. Meadowview specifically is a great opportunity for that. When the housing market dips, they'll come in, and then there'll be a 4-plex next to your house. There'll be a 4-plex next to a tract home. Are you fighting it at all? Are you fighting it at all? Cities are fighting it. Are you doing anything to stop that? No comment?
We're not allowed to comment during public comments. Is that it, Randy?
Madam Mayor, that's all the comments I have.
All right, so that's all the public comments. So I will now close the public hearing, and we are ready for discussion. Anybody? Discussion, thoughts?
Well, just one quick one. With regard to SB9, we do have a position on SB9, is my understanding, and so does the California League of Cities. And Randy, I know you're a legislative advocate for that activity. Can you just sort of provide us with a bit of a brief on what the Cal Cities position was?
Sure, and actually we were on the record as a city and also the League of California Cities and other cities up and down the state from the very beginning of the introduction of the bill as it went through the committee process as well, and we stayed on record. So we were also a part of the coalition that opposed it. Unfortunately, it did pass by the legislature and was signed into law by the governor, but we were actively a part of the opposition coalition from introduction.
Thank you.
Anybody else discussion? Jack, I see you going for the button.
Yeah, maybe just a comment or two before we move the item. So thank you very much for the presentation. I spent the last better part of 2 years over at SCAG, so apologies for the delay. Getting that many elected officials in one room to agree on one thing was a fairly difficult task. Brandon's right. The coastal cities stepped up. The Inland Empire in general has typically been the affordable place, and the housing's been here, right? So we saw a shift. That's a good thing for us, but we were prepared for it anyways. Some of this in this presentation, and I went over this in our one-on-ones, was the sample workforce, like putting a face to an hourly rate really helps humanize this, right? Because we hear opposition to workforce housing, which quite honestly is a preschool teacher, a grocery worker, that's absurd. These are folks in our community. So it just made that presentation much better for me to digest, and I think the community as well. I think when we've certainly planned for this with Uptown Jefferson, that ability is there. I'd like us to see, sort of get some of that infrastructure in place, much like we did down here, right, in Old Town. Mm-hmm. I mentioned the Uptown LA, mentioned some streetscapes to really drive that development. So we can have that missing middle like as soon as possible, not 10, 15. But the opportunity's there. I'm excited for it. Laurel, thanks for your engagement. It's been a long haul, right? And it's been a bumpy road, like we can all agree on that. But that's what I think we do well as a city is we engage, we work through things, and we get to a place now where, well, look, we have this really good housing element that has a lot of opportunity for folks to buy a home and generate wealth, which is what we all want to do.
Yes.
So, with that, I'll move the item, but I'm sure there's more discussion.
Anybody? There is and has always been a stigma applied to individuals who live in quote-unquote affordable housing. And somehow it got a bum rap. And so when we say the word affordable housing, I prefer the word attainable housing, because that means that the people that we work with, that we love, our neighbors, our family members, I mean, we've all been in the service industry at some point, right? You come out of school and you don't exactly know what you're going to do. You have a summer job. We need to keep our families and our residents here. It's always been disturbing that for years, and we're still doing it, we send our residents, the workforce, across the Ortega to Mission Viejo and those areas to work. And they did not want to, they weren't taking any responsibility for affordable housing. So, you know, it was almost, I always felt that they were, well, they can't live here. We'll take them and we want them to come here and work, but then you have to go home at night. You know, and so that has been wrong. So I'm very, very happy to hear that the coastal cities are stepping up. Really, they didn't have a choice. I mean, they could continue to fight, but the state has said that it's really going to start holding cities accountable now for this planning. And Temecula has made a way to achieve the current RHNA numbers anyway. But again, those are not going to go away. We have to still, even when we're built out, we have to still make allowances for it. And then I said the state took away the only way that we could finance or help developers to provide this housing. Because when developers build affordable housing, or I use the term myself, when they build attainable housing, and with the restrictions that are placed on it, they cannot, their project doesn't pencil. They can't get financing for those kinds of products. So it takes special agencies to be able to do attainable housing projects because they rely on grants, federal funding, and things like that. So, and there is attainable housing in Temecula, and you can look right out the front of City Hall and see it. And much to the chagrin of some people, it's not what they imagine as, quote unquote, the affordable housing that they have applied the stigma to. It's beautiful. It blends in with every other. You can't tell attainable housing in Temecula from the housing, any housing. So that's the other important thing too. We don't want, you know, people that work hard providing us food and our services and, you know, Target. People who do, and young teachers and young police officers and firemen, young engineers. We don't want them to feel like they're less than anybody else. Temecula is a community of residents, period. And we don't judge our residents by what their incomes are. So we don't want people that have grown up in Temecula to have to live other places because they can't afford to live here. And what we've seen over the course of the last 2 years is just insane. We thought during the 2000, when we had the housing crash, we thought those prices for homes were ridiculous. Well, we've exceeded those now. The problem is we don't face the same kind of financing difficulties we did then, so a crash is not as likely, at least a crash of that nature. But this is needed, and for some communities, they have to be forced to take a strong look at their residents and their population and to promote this type of attainable housing. So, you know, I support the item just for that. And the state has taken so much local control away from us. You know, we've lost so much of our local control, and we are elected to make these decisions on behalf of our residents. And we don't like it when they take those decisions away from us. And so much of what we're talking about tonight, we really have no control over. The same way with the approvals for the, you know, the new, I always want to call them auxiliary dwellings, but, you know, and I don't want to use the term granny flats, but that's what we called them, you know, the little smaller house you could build on your property. And the state has now said we cannot control those. Anybody, regardless of the size of their property, can build one of those on their property. So, and they can expand their homes, they can convert their garages, which previously they could not. And these are the items where we've lost local control. And, but yet we have to deal with it and, maintain that safe community. So, and we intend to do that. I'm just glad that we have had the vision all along to work on that attainable housing and that we're in a lot better shape than many, many cities. So that was a really, really good report. Can we put this up on the website?
Absolutely.
Yes, it's really good. Matt?
I had one quick question I forgot to ask. So we work through SCAG for this as the authority, or I should say the jurisdiction that oversees our RENA. Is that legislated? Like, how is that defined as to how we break out the jurisdictions under which we're falling?
Yes, that is. The City of Temecula is within the Southern California Association of Governments Metropolitan Planning Organization region.
Right.
So, yes, absolutely.
But is it legislated to specifically say it's the SCAG or SANDAG or that model is the measuring scale? And the only reason I bring it up is because if the language is fuzzy or there's an opportunity to revise that language, because I think you hit on something very important earlier, is the only reason the RENA numbers changed is because our coastal cities stepped up finally after a couple of decades. I don't want to rely on them anymore to do that, right? I mean, we are not coastal communities, and nor are they Temecula, and there's a lot of not just geographic disconnect between the two, but socioeconomic as well. So being lumped into such a vast region, we are not the Los Angeles basin, right? I mean, let's be honest. So I'm and I realize that burden for many years has shifted out to the Inland Empire and Riverside County because of their resistance to this. So the only reason I bring it up is, again, if we're going to be proactive about this and deal with some of our potential legislative solutions, one of those might be to redefine what a region is. So that it's, we're going through that process right now, right, with the redistricting that's going on for congressional all the way down through, city council districts. And they always talk about, like communities, right? Well, we're not like Huntington Beach. So why are we lumped in with, a community that's so, different and disconnected?
Because they just drew the line at Los Angeles and southward.
So anyway, I would just say, if we're going to advocate for something else, then maybe we can talk to our local partners, WRCOG and others, to have that conversation. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that there's probably a lot of cities, East County, San Diego versus the rest. I mean, this is a common thread, I'm sure. Oh, yeah. So I'd like for us maybe as part of this just to recognize that and maybe advocate for it as, a little bit prospective.
The other challenge is we never know what the numbers are going to be. I mean, we can plan and be visionary as much as we want, but we still don't know what the numbers will be when the next time that they do this. So, you aim high and do the best you can. Zach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to piggyback off of what Mayor Pro Tem Ron said. I can fully concur that SCAG is a massive MPO. Yeah. From Ventura County all the way out to Coachella. So if there is a way for us to define a smaller MPO, I'm all in.
That would be a massive undertaking, but somebody's got to propose it. It's worth a look. Yeah.
The role of WRCOG is absolutely right. Thank you for mentioning that. While you are within the Metropolitan Planning Organization of SCAG, there are more sub-regional entities that can help facilitate that conversation, the Western Riverside Council of Governments, or WRCOG, being one of those. So another wonderful opportunity to collaborate with your neighbors in similar positions.
Yeah, we want to follow up with that. So I am the WRCOG representative, so we should follow up with that. Any more discussion?
Mayor, last question.
Go ahead, Jess.
Just out of curiosity, who comes up with how do they come up with the allocation category numbers? So for instance, how many of each level has a certain amount of houses? How is that allocated?
It's a wonderful question. It's, again, part of the methodology. So they look at existing overburden, rent or housing costs in local communities, so the percentage of a population that's overpaying for housing. So when I described earlier 25% of the Temecula community is paying 50% or more for their housing costs. They'll look at factors like that. They also look at overcrowded conditions. They look at market conditions in terms of, where different housing products are being developed at different prices. So all of that is considered as part of that methodology. So not only did it determine your overall allocation, that methodology also included the factors that resulted in the distribution of units. And that varies city to city. So different cities receive different proportions of their overall allocation within each income category.
So is it allocated because it's special to Temecula, or it's just allocated because it's needed?
The methodology is consistent, but the factors used to result in the output is unique to Temecula.
Okay.
So the methodology is the same for every jurisdiction, but the percentage of renters overpaying for housing is different in Temecula than it is in another city.
Okay, thank you.
Is that process written down anyplace?
It is, and I'm sure that your staff would be happy to provide you with a copy. It seems like this council member is familiar with it and perhaps excited to read it again.
Well,
I'll give you a copy.
It probably looks like spaghetti, right?
No, it's
where this
quite,
agency, if it does this, it goes this way, and if it's this one, it goes this way.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's quite informative, and it provides some more context than I can offer tonight. And also, as you start to plan to think about 8 years from now, it may lend some insight into the different topic areas that are addressed through this process.
In the meantime, they may change the procedure.
They most certainly will. 8 years from now, I am confident that the same methodology will be modified.
You're the data guy. Fix this. And staff, thank you. And thank you. It's really a great report. Great report.
Thank you to the council and all the subcommittees. They did a lot of work.
Okay, so we've
I'll
had...
second the motion.
Thank you. So let's vote. Did your screen come back, Jess?
I don't know. There we go. I
Okay.
actually got it.
And there we have, and that is unanimous. And that is approval of a huge, huge scope of work. So thank you, and very, very important.